When you know that you're about to embark on a long road trip to 2,000 kilometers or so for 2 or 3 days worth of driving, what you want is a really good audiobook. And for the drive to Cairns, I selected The Last Viking by Don Holway, narrated by Mark Meadows. The narrator did a fabulous job with it, by the way. I was just come from a weekend doing the Viking solstice at Lismore. I was definitely in the mood for some Viking history, and this was perfect. It is so well written. I can't emphasize how well it is done. It draws on a lot of sources, including a couple I hadn't heard of. I had heard of Snorri Snorrisson. I've read other accounts of Harald Hardrada in the past. Harold Sigurdsson, as he started off his life as being. Yes, so one of the things the author does incredibly well is he creates a very nuanced, balanced view of Hardrada because he uses so many different sources and he weaves them together. And he somehow manages to do something that very few history writers can do. He manages to mention where his sources are through the narrative, define or evaluate how reliable they are as part of the narrative, and still manage to combine them into a really exciting, absolutely gripping at times narrative. History writers struggle with this. Many of them can create a gripping narrative that's based on actual historic documents, but they don't seem to be able to incorporate into the text for the benefit of people like me who want to know how much of this is real and how much is this invented. Don Holway, if I was wearing a hat, I'd be taking it off. He does a fabulous job of it. Now, after he becomes king in Norway, that's when Harald Hardrada earns his title of Hardrada, which means apparently, so I'm told, hard ruler. He doesn't sound like a nice guy, and he doesn't sound like a happy guy, and he ruled Norway hard. Did he ever? He had perpetual wars with Sven of Denmark, and really anyone else, including most of his own citizens. He elevated people only to war against them. This dude was harsh. And the picture emerges of this really hard, bitter man who knows nothing but warfare, but doesn't really know how to rule, and he doesn't know how to relate to people. Hardrada was under the thumb or nothing. He drives loyal-ish subjects at least to revolt, and a lot of the things that are recorded about him sound intensely harsh, and that many of these records come from his own people, some including his bard. So yes, then again we get into part 4, which tells once again from the end of the tale, this Battle of Stamford Bridge, and that is the end of his life, and it's very, very vivid. Overall, it's a great book. The battles are magnificent. This book felt more epic than Wheel of Time. Robert Jordan can go whistle in the wind compared to this book. This is epicness. This is battles. This is love. This is far, far stronger stuff than most fantasy series. It's well researched, it's spectacular, it's historically accurate, it's all pulled together into this marvelous story. This may well be the best book that I've read all year. Yeah, raving a bit here, aren't I? It's a very meaty book. I think this is a book that you could read over and over again for many years and still find more to get out of it. If you are into Norse mythology, Vikings, Byzantium, history, this will be for you. If you like epic stories and you're starting to get that slightly blah feeling that you get. I've recently read several series of epic fantasy, and I've been reading them for decades. And when I start an epic fantasy these days, it's a bit of a sigh as you adjust to the world, which other strange names have been invented, the geography. All of this has been invented for your pleasure. But I've read an awful lot of them, and they tend to meld into one. This story has all of that, but it's actual history, so it's of some benefit to remember it. And it is far, far more exciting than many of the ones I've read. So yeah, epic fantasy readers, read this instead, and then go back to epic fantasy. There's plenty there. Magic swords, no. Real swords, holy shit. You wouldn't believe how many swords. Epic, just saying, epic. Truly epic. Did I mention epic? Definitely for people who've got my interest. Total hats off to Don Holwell for producing such a magnificently researched. The research in this is spectacular. Great book.